There is a particular kind of frustrating that has nothing to do with being unsuccessful. It is the frustration of someone who has read the books, who understands the concepts, who could genuinely sit down and explain compound interest to a room full of people, and whose bank account does not reflect any of it. If you are that person, you already know the latte thing is not actually the problem. You know about index funds. You have read at least one book with the word rich in the title. You understand that you should be investing. You have probably had a conversation about Roth IRAs at some point. You are not financially illiterate. You are financially stuck. And stuck is a completely different problem from uninformed. The reason that distinction matters is that the advice designed for uninformed people does not work for stuck people. Telling someone who already knows what to do to just start investing is the financial equivalent of telling someone with insomnia to just go to sleep. The problem is not that they do not know sleep exists. So why does this happen? Why do smart people with real financial knowledge end up in the same place financially as people who never engaged with any of this? Not always, not universally, but often enough that it is clearly a pattern worth understanding. Because the answer has nothing to do with intelligence and everything to do with the specific ways intelligence backfires when you apply it to money. The first thing that goes wrong is research without a finish line. Ask a smart person when they are going to start investing, and they will almost always say something like, soon, or when I have figured out the best approach. Ask them what figuring out the best approach looks like, and they will describe something with no clear endpoint. Compare the main brokerages, understand the difference between index funds and ETFs, read about tax loss harvesting, figure out whether to invest a lump sum or spread it out, think about international exposure versus domestic only, read the arguments for bonds, even though they are boring. Circle back to the brokerage comparison, because the first article was from 2 years ago. This can go on for a very long time, months, occasionally years. And the whole time, it does not feel like nothing is happening because something is happening. Information is being processed. Understanding is being built. The person is engaging with the topic seriously. It genuinely feels like productive work. But money is not moving. And money not moving is the only thing that actually counts in this particular domain. The research phase of investing should probably take about 2 weeks, maybe 3. After that, you know enough to start, and every additional week of research is costing you compounding that you cannot get back. The problem is that 2 weeks does not feel like enough time to be certain, and smart people want to be certain before they act. The part they miss is that certainty about long-term investing is not available at any level of research. The uncertainty is a feature of the territory, not a gap in the map. More research does not eliminate it. It just gives you more to read while you wait. The second thing is taking a simple problem and making it complicated. The basic personal finance strategy that works for most people in most situations is not complicated. You spend less than you earn, you invest the difference consistently in low-cost, broad market funds, you'll leave it alone for a long time. That is genuinely most of it. Smart people hear that, and something in them resists it. Not the logic. They can see the logic. What they resist is the idea that this is actually sufficient. It feels too simple to be the real answer. It feels like advice for someone who has not thought about this as carefully as they have. So they look for the more sophisticated version. Individual stock picks, sector rotation strategies, options, alternative assets, a portfolio that is rebalanced according to specific signals. Something that requires more of the intelligence they are bringing to the problem. The uncomfortable truth is that the data on this is not ambiguous or contested. The most sophisticated active managers in the world, people who do this full-time with research teams and institutional-grade data, underperform the simple passive approach over long time periods in the majority of cases. Not because they are not intelligent, because markets are very good at absorbing available information, and the additional costs of active management eat whatever edge skill generates. If that is true for the professionals with every possible advantage, the idea that individual intelligence applied part-time from a laptop will produce better outcomes than the simple approach deserves a lot more skepticism than smart people typically give it. The complexity feels like an asset. The evidence suggests it is usually a liability. The third thing is justifying the wrong decision so well that it stops being recognizable as the wrong decision. This is the one where intelligence actively makes things worse rather than just inefficiently delays good outcomes. Because the same capability that makes smart people effective professionally also makes them very good at building convincing arguments for whatever they have already decided emotionally. The expensive car is the cleanest example because almost everyone has been through some version of it. You see the car, you want the car. Before you have consciously decided anything, your brain has already started building the case. The total cost of ownership is actually competitive when you factor in the resale value. The reliability record on this model reduces long-term maintenance costs significantly. You drive a lot, and the quality of the daily commute affects your work output in a way that is not trivial. You have been disciplined in other areas, and this is a considered reward, not an impulse. Every one of those arguments is technically true in some way. None of them were generated by starting from a neutral position and working toward the most financially optimal decision. They were generated by starting from, "I want this," and working backward to justifications. The direction of the reasoning is what reveals it. Real analysis goes from question to answer. Rationalization goes from answer to supporting arguments. The problem is that from the inside, these two processes feel identical, which is what makes the second one so consistently effective at producing bad outcomes with no accompanying feeling of having done something wrong. There is a test for this that actually works. Before any significant financial decision, impose a waiting period of at least 2 weeks, not to do more research, just to wait. Arguments that survive the wait are probably genuine reasoning. Arguments that feel much weaker 2 weeks later were almost certainly rationalization that depended on the emotional charge of the moment to feel compelling. The fourth thing is the very specific type of optimism about future behavior that intelligent people are prone to. I am going to sort out my investments when I get the promotion, because then I will have more income to work with, and I will set it up properly. The promotion arrives, the income goes up. The lifestyle adjusts to the new income within a few months in ways that feel individually reasonable, but collectively mean the budget feels roughly as constrained as before. The investing setup that was going to happen when things were more comfortable has been pushed to the next milestone, which is always about 6 months away. This is not a character flaw. It is a documented feature of how humans think about future behavior. We consistently overestimate how much our future selves will follow through on commitments our current selves make. We imagine a future version of ourselves that has the same intentions we currently have, but without the pressures and competing demands that currently get in the way. That version exists in our imagination, but it does not exist anywhere else. The only thing that works reliably for this is removing future you from the decision entirely. Automatic transfers that execute on payday before you have seen the money and decided what to do with it. Not because automation is some brilliant insight, because it is the thing that actually solves the problem of a future you who consistently has good reasons for why this month is not quite the right moment to start. The fifth thing is spending money on signals that nobody is reading the way you think. Smart people tend to end up in environments where consumption functions as a social signal. The neighborhood, the car, the vacations that get mentioned casually, the restaurant choices, the quality of the things you own that people can see. These things communicate something in certain environments, and the pressure to communicate it is real and not imaginary. The problem is the math. If you are spending money to signal success to people who are spending money to signal success to you, nobody in that loop is actually accumulating the success they are all signaling. You are collectively maintaining an image of financial achievement, at the direct cost of financial achievement. The genuinely wealthy people in any room are usually not the most visibly impressive. They're the ones who stopped caring about the signals early enough that the compounding had time to do something real. A person who started saving 25% of a modest income at 27 and drove the same car for 12 years is almost certainly in better financial shape at 45 than a person who earned twice as much, spent most of it on the visible markers of success, and started saving seriously at 36. The first life looks boring. The second life looks successful. The numbers underneath do not agree with the appearance. The sixth thing is getting very good at optimizing a number that does not actually determine the outcome. The number that feels most important in personal finance is income. This makes sense because income is the input to everything else. But income is not what builds wealth. The percentage of income that converts into invested assets is what builds wealth. Those two things are related, but they are not the same thing. And the difference matters more than most people realize. Someone earning $65,000 and investing 20% of it is putting $13,000 a year to work. Someone earning $130,000 and investing 5% of it is putting $6,500 a year to work. The person earning half as much is building financial security twice as fast. Not because they are more disciplined or more financially sophisticated, just because they are pointed at the number that actually matters.
Smart people are excellent at income optimization, salary negotiation, career moves, high-income skill development. These things all genuinely matter, and they are worth doing. But they create a trap when the income growth outpaces the savings rate growth, which it almost always does, because lifestyle inflation is automatic, and savings rate increases require deliberate action. The result is someone who goes from earning $60,000 to earning $140,000 over a decade and ends up at 42 wondering why their net worth does not reflect that trajectory. Because most of the income went into a more expensive version of a life, rather than into assets that compound.
Every time income increases, the question worth asking before anything else is what percentage of this increase goes directly into investments before my lifestyle figures out it is available. Not because the lifestyle does not deserve anything, because the lifestyle adjustment happens automatically, and the investment redirect does not. One of those two things needs your active participation. It is not the lifestyle adjustment. The seventh thing is the quiet belief that the standard approach probably does not fully apply to your specific situation. This one is almost never spoken out loud. It just operates as a background assumption that subtly modifies every financial decision. Your career trajectory is unusual enough that the conventional urgency about starting to save at a specific age does not map perfectly onto your situation. Your future earning potential is high enough that the starting balance matters less than it would for someone on a more conventional path. You have equity in something. You are building something. Your situation has features that make the general advice not quite right for you. Sometimes these things are actually true. High trajectories exist. Equity pays out. Businesses generate wealth. But these narratives are used vastly more often as unconscious justifications for not doing the boring, reliable thing than they are genuine exceptions to it. And the boring, reliable thing has a track record that almost no individual exception story can match when the numbers are run honestly rather than optimistically. The way to know if you are in a genuine exception or using exception thinking as a rationalization is to ask yourself what you would be doing with your savings rate if you were not an exception. If the answer is materially different from what you are currently doing, you are probably not an exception. Every single one of these 7 things has one thing in common. None of them are about not knowing what to do. The smart broke person knows what to do. They have known for a while. The problem is not the information. The problem is that intelligence, applied to personal finance, consistently generates high-quality reasons to delay the simple, boring actions that actually work. better research, more sophisticated strategies, smarter justifications, more detailed plans for a future self that does not arrive on schedule, more convincing stories about why the standard approach does not quite fit, more impressive metrics to focus on instead of the right one.
The traps that catch smart people are not the obvious ones. They are the ones that feel like careful thinking. What changes this is not more intelligence. It is a specific kind of suspicion toward your own reasoning, when that reasoning conveniently points away from the simple thing you already know you should be doing. The moment your brain produces a very intelligent argument for why you cannot start investing today, or why this particular spending is actually justified, or why your situation is a genuine exception to the general rule, that is the moment to get suspicious. Not because the argument is necessarily wrong, but because it is suspiciously convenient.
The distance between knowing and doing is where financial lives are won and lost. And closing that distance has nothing to do with finding better information or smarter strategies. It has everything to do with noticing what your intelligence is actually doing in the moments that matter. Because an argument being smart does not make it right. It just makes it harder to see that it might not be.